perfect head, the minor eruption down below. Returning from the changing table, we move to the couch. I stretch out, my heels propped up on the arm, head on a cushion, with the snugly wrapped package of baby on my chest. Rachel, my daughter, rising and falling gently with each breath I take. Her own breath is so light, I can only hear it in those odd moments when the clatter from the kitchen and the chatter of my sons stop at the same time. Looking down past my own cheeks, I can see the top of her head, the stub of nose peeking out. The pulse of the soft spot on her sweet little noggin slows down, and together we drift into sleep, resting together on a greater chest, close enough to hear God breathing. Part 1. The Heart of the Matter. Chapter 1. The Voice from Above. At that time Jesus came from Nazareth in Galilee and was baptized by John in the Jordan. As Jesus was coming up out of the water, he saw heaven being torn open and the Spirit descending on him like a dove. And a voice came from heaven, "You are my Son, whom I love. With you I am well pleased." From the Gospel of Mark, chapter 1. There was a crowd, as usual, although dawn had barely broken, hunkered on the banks of the river, scratching themselves absently and yawning, waiting for him to appear. Narrow ribbons of smoke stretching lazily upward in the still air from the ashes of a dozen small fires made and tended through the cold night. They had missed out the day before, and decided to stay rather than making the long trek back to Jerusalem. Most had no food, not having thought to bring any, or having eaten what little they had already. The few who did nibbled their crust surreptitiously, not wanting to be besieged by their hungry neighbors. Some had no food simply because they had trudged through the wilderness to this spot by the Jordan, instead of working that day, and so had no money to buy food anyway. They were a ragged bunch, mostly. A furious rustling in the low, dense bushes lining the opposite bank. A pair of bony hands and one hairy leg emerged, thrust some branches aside, and the rest of the Baptist followed into view. A mutter ran through the crowd. The men stood up. The children stopped their games and stared. The Baptist stared back for a long moment, then nodded, apparently satisfied with what he saw, and turned his back on them. His hair hung in matted hanks down his back. Everything about him seemed to be the same color as the desert floor. He undressed quickly, giving his ghastly camel-skin jerkin a flap. A cloud of ochre dust drifted away from it, before hanging it as carefully as if it were a linen robe on a branch of the bush from which he had appeared. As he bent to untie his sandals, he presented a pair of pale, scrawny cheeks so perfectly to his audience that a child guffawed. The Baptist gave no sign of noticing, but did procure a scrap of dirty cloth from a leather bag he had been carrying, and girded himself with it. Seating himself on a rock, he drew the bag to him again, withdrew a small package, and unfolding it, began to eat the contents while gazing into the sky above their heads. He crunched away contentedly for a short while, then returned the cloth wrapper to the bag and licked each finger clean with a loud, delighted, smacking sound. "Locust and honey," muttered an awestruck young boy to his brother. The Baptist rose and, with a grin at the mob opposite, leapt into the river. It was only thigh-deep, but he submerged himself, then floated face first to the surface. The mud he had disturbed bloomed creamily about him for a moment before the current shredded it and the river resumed.